Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Welcome to Thrive Agri's webinar. We'll just give a couple of minutes, 10 minutes. We'll start at 10:10 for more people to join. Thank you very much for joining. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning, Senor.
Um, Hello, host. Can I go ahead?
Hi, Ayo. Please, can you give us a few minutes? Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining. And those that joined earlier, thank you so much for waiting. Thank you for joining Thrive Agric's webinar on building a thriving agri-tech sector in a changing climate. Today, we have some panelists with really good insights into the sector. And we also have a keynote speaker. But before then, let's enjoy a promotional video from Thrive Agric. Thank you very much.
Markets where they can get the best prices for their produce after harvest. This is where we come in. Our work at Thrive Agric is focused on solving these three problems using technology. We link smallholder farmers to capital in form of input. Food is critical to your existence, but where does it come from? Where does your food come from? It comes from them. At Thrive Agric, our vision is to build an Africa that feeds herself and the world. We are passionate about food security, and we believe that smallholder farmers are key to unlocking our continent's unrivaled food production potential. But these primary food producers face three major challenges: access to finance to purchase quality farm inputs like seeds, fertilizers, and crop protection products; access to contemporary and data-driven farming best practices to get the best yield at the end of the farming season; and access to local and global markets where they can get the best prices for their produce after harvest. This is where we come in. Our work at Thrive Agric is focused on solving these three problems using technology. We link smallholder farmers to capital in form of input financing and services. We provide them with tailored data-driven advisory, training, and development throughout the farming season. And we make available post-harvest services and connect them directly to local and global markets for their commodities. Oh, and when we say using technology, we mean our technology, an agricultural operating system, AOS, built to enable and enhance several agricultural processes, such as capturing farmer data during onboarding, identifying coordinates and measuring farmland size during farm mapping, calculating adequate farmer input required during input distribution, tracking crop growth and progress during field monitoring, and managing inventory of commodities received at harvest, including storage, sales, and shipment to off-takers. Our mission is simple. We want to build the largest network of profitable farmers across Africa, ensuring there's always food for all.
Na samu karuwa kaman irin na sai mashin haka da nake hawa ba ni nake hawa ma barwa nake ake ma a ba da shi haka nake samun abin da zan yi da abin da ina sauran su harkokin rayuwa na ba tare na je wajen wani na kai kaina wajen abin nan ba.
Sorry about that. We can continue. I'm sorry, since we've watched more than half of the video.
Okay, next slide, please. Welcome once again to all those that are just joining. Thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate your participation. So I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker right now. He is Ayodiji Arikawe. He is the Chief Technical Officer and co-founder of Thrive Agric Limited, an agricultural technology company focused on food security in Africa. He's a managing partner at Velocity Digital, and he invests in technology companies. Ayo leads the Market Access Group at the Nigeria Economic Summit Group and mentors African startups. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer engineering and has participated in programs like Y Combinator and Google Launchpad. Ayo has won a lot of prestigious awards, but this includes the very recent 2022 Visa Everywhere initiative, and he has gained recognition from the Jack Ma Foundation and Future Awards Africa. Everybody, welcome, help me to welcome Ayodiji Arikawe for his keynote speech.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, and apologies this started late. Hi to the community both here on Zoom and on YouTube. And thanks to the host for putting this together and to all our guest speakers. Because we've taken it some time, so I'll just run straight to the point. So thank you so much for coming, guys. And because this focus of this speech was on how Agri-Tech can play a role in climate change, So I did the most technology thing to do, and I asked ChatGPT, and I told it to tell me some interesting facts about climate change. And I'll give you some examples. The World Bank estimates that by 2050, climate change could force 140 million people to migrate out of their countries. It also says that there are very extreme weather events. So for instance, in 2020 alone, we have 30 storms and 28 storms. We had 30 storms in 2020 alone, just as a result of climate change. And this is in addition to all the wildfires, increase in hurricane, increase in floods, and everything happening around the country. And I'm sure we experienced ours last year. So it's a very real challenge that we need to encounter. We need to attack, right? And agriculture is one of the biggest ways to do that. And one of the few things we can look at doing is how can we begin to work around sustainable farming practices? What do we need to do around precision agriculture? How can we work around agroforestry and reforestation? What can we do about carbon farming, improve livestock management? How do we put together all these practices to ensure that our world is safer and actually leave a world behind that our kids can grow up in? And at Tribe, we are very passionate about this and hence this webinar. And I'm sure as we go through the day, Samira and the team will share a lot of things around what we're doing around agroforestry, what we're trying to do with credit in partnership with Rabobank, and just a couple of other things that we have down the road. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I'm looking forward to listening to all the amazing ideas that will come from the panel session. And yeah, have a great time.
Thank you very much for that very wonderful speech. It was a good ginger, a good motivation to the webinar in general. And now we're going on to the panel session. And next slide, please. Our moderator is the one and only Samira Bello, Partnerships Lead, my boss at Thrive Agri. She has over 5 years experience in the agribusiness space and 8 years of experience in the community development space. She's really passionate about community development. She currently leads partnerships at Thrive Agri. She focuses on ensuring the entire agricultural value chain across various African countries has access to operations and financial needs and creates sustainable impacts using the SDG lens. She has a master's degree in globalization, business and development from the University of Sussex, United Kingdom, where she graduated with distinction. She's also a Chevening Scholar, Mandela Washington Fellow, where she was trained in business leadership at the University of Iowa, United States. She's a One Young World Ambassador and a Young African Leadership Initiative Regional Leadership Center Fellow, where she was trained on public policy management by the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. She wears many, many hats, as we can see. Samira is committed to creating a blend of social, economic, and environmental impact in the agricultural and business spaces to ensure sustainability and growth. Over to you for the panel session, Samira.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all our panelists for accepting to be here today. So I'm going to read and show our profiles of the panelists, and then we'll go straight to the Q&A, to the panelist session Q&A. I'm very sure many people are eager to hear what they have to say. And so currently we have Mr. Rufus. So Mr. Rufus is an experienced professional with over 20 years expertise in the poverty alleviation for smallholder farmers in Africa and the United States. As the Nigerian country director for HEFA International, his focus is on ending hunger and poverty in Nigeria through innovative programs that transform the agricultural sector and address income disparities among smallholder farmers, particularly women and men. Rufus has held various leadership roles in economic development programs, including USAID and the UK Department for International Development. He has a master's degree in community economic development and an executive education in performance measurement from non-profit organizations, and a bachelor's degree in biology and a diploma in fisheries technology. He's very well educated and vast in the field of agriculture and climate change. Welcome, Mr. Rufus.
Good morning, Samira. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Good morning. Thank you. Our next panelist is Mr. Akintunde. Mr. Akintunde is an experienced professional in the agriculture industry, currently serving as the head of business development and digital projects for Nigeria at OCP Africa. With over a decade of experience, he specializes in designing innovative solutions for value chain problems faced by smallholder farmers in Nigeria. Mr. Akin has held roles at the notarial chemical industries and a prominent Nigerian bank before joining OCP Africa's business development team. He has been involved in notable initiatives such as Agri-Boosters, OCP School Lab, and Ondogo, a platform for fostering digital opportunities and collaboration in agriculture. Mr. Akin holds a bachelor's degree in geoinformatics and a master's degree in business administration. Welcome, Mr. Akin.
Thank you very much, Samira. It's really good to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Titilope Paderi. Ms. Titilope is a senior multimedia journalist with Premium Times, Nigeria, Nigeria's leading online investigative newspaper, and has practiced journalism for over 6 years. She's a gender advocate with a passion for solutions journalism. She has authored gender articles on smallholder women farmers, climate crisis and alternatives, displaced women, female genital mutilation, self-shelters, gender-based violence survivors, women in conflict situations, and the plight of diverse women, among others. Some of these stories have led to impactful changes in community. She has also trained over 200 journalists on mobile journalism and digital storytelling. Having imagined, I was one of the 2021 Facebook Africa Video Storytellers Program. She emerged as the runner-up in the 2021 Female Reporters Leadership Program for the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism. She was also a recipient for the 2023 Radio Netherlands Training Center Scholarship. Welcome, Ms. Titilope.
Thank you very much. Apologies, I might not be able to turn on my video because of unstable network, but thank you for having me.
We totally understand. Thank you for coming. Next, we have Mr. Abdusamad Issa is a co-founder and CEO of Extension Africa. Abdusamad has a Bachelor's of Technology in Agricultural Economics and Extension from Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University, Bauchi. He's an agricultural economist dedicated to poverty alleviation, food security, rural and agricultural development. He has worked as a monetary evaluation and learning consultant and agricultural economist for ABT Associates Inc., IRA, and TechnoServe. He is a fellow of Nigerian Association of Evaluators and member of the African Association Evaluators. Welcome, Mr. Abdusamad.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here.
Thank you very much. Next, we have our last speaker, but not the least, we have Mr. Samuel Kahora. He is the Agricultural Manager, Mexico Corps Agrifin. Mr. Samuel Kahora Karanja is a seasoned professional with over 12 years of experience in designing inclusive markets facilitation and financing models for small and medium enterprises in sub-Saharan Africa. He specializes in making markets work for the poor and has completed successful consultancy assignments for organizations like WFP, World Vision, and NRC, DCA, and Mexicops. Samuel has led projects in Somalia and worked with Equity Bank Kenya, TechnoServe, and global communities. He holds an MBA and a bachelor's degree in agriculture from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture. Welcome, Mr. Samuel.
Thanks, Samira.
Hi, Mr.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thank you. And so now we've met all our panelists, amazing personalities with vast experience in the agricultural sector and climate space, where they've worked on various issues. And so we'll start with the questions. And please don't forget, as we're running our questions, as we're running the session, if you have any question, post on the chat, for those on Zoom and those live on YouTube, because we know that there are persons live on YouTube. Post on the YouTube chat, chats, and our team will take your questions and answers once it's questions and answers time. So we'll start with the first question. So our first question is a general question to all panelists, but we'd like for Mr. Akin to start with that. And the question goes as thus: in the face of a changing climate, what are the major challenges that the agri-tech sector is currently grappling with? Over to you, Mr. Akin.
All right, thank you very much, Samira. Just to be sure, can you hear me and see me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. All right, thank you so much, and thank you to all my fellow panelists. I think that it's nice to see all the representatives of various companies doing a lot of great things in agriculture. And kudos to Thrive Agri, Ayo, and the team for what you're doing. I think first I would want to pick on a few points around what climate smart agriculture is. I mean, because we are young people in the agricultural sector, there's a lot of buzz around words. So when we hear things like climate smart agriculture, we get very excited. But what exactly does this tend to speak to? What we defined it as is an integrated or holistic approach to agricultural production. And that approach tends to provide both predictive and responsive solutions to the challenges of climate change. One thing Ayo said clearly in his speech is that climate change has come to stay. It's here already. There's very little we can do to prevent it right now. But how do we mitigate the risks involved? And what exactly can we do to do that smartly in a way that will be done better? And basically, so in the definition, what we're doing is providing predictive and responsive solutions to the challenges of climate time, ensuring two key things. One, so the solution will almost every area or quarter or region or farmer or whatever it is that you've worked on. But two, and very importantly, resilience. We see resilience as building increasing adaptation to certain factors that have evolved over time. Ayo did well to talk about some of the data and scary data, basically, about rainfall patterns, about storms, about heat, about different things that have happened as a result of climate change over the years. But the question is, how does the agri sector prepare for it? And that's what climate smart agriculture is about. It involves practices, it involves use of technologies, it involves adaptation, it involves policies. Government is also not out of this. It involves policies that would enhance productivity for the average smallholder farmer. And when we say the average smallholder farmer, we're saying that rural poor farmer who is in the local area, somewhere in his village, working on probably 1 hectare or 2 hectares of land, not having access to a lot of finances, but how do we reach him to be sure that he is ready for the effects of climate change? And the major focus of climate change, climate smart agriculture, is that we want to increase adaptation capacity. So what we're saying in adaptation is we're saying, can we build more resilience for smallholder farmers on the impact of climate change? Can we reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Can we ensure sustainability of agricultural production systems? Now, going straight to the question you've asked, what are the key things that are challenges? I would mention 4 of them, and I'm sure my speakers will have my fellow speakers will also have, or panelists, as we are called, would also have other things to talk about. Now, one major challenge we've seen is the uncertainty and the variability in weather patterns. I've been in this sector for, close to 15 years. And I've seen times when every year around the same time, the farmer is not sure when to plant. He's not sure when the rains are going to mature. He's not sure when certain key natural factors that he depends on to know when to ply his trade are going to come. And things have changed.
Hello, Mr. Akin, we can hear you again. I guess network issues. Mr. Ekin, can you hear me? If you can hear me, we can't hear you. Okay. I think he will rejoin. Before he tries to, okay, you're back.
Yes, I'm back. I'm sorry, you lost me there. And it will be interesting to see where I stopped though.
Yes, you were talking about the problems, which is uncertainty of weather pattern.
Fantastic. So the other one will be on availability of data. A lot of companies want to work with data to be able to project into the future, and unfortunately they can't. The third one, let me do this very quickly so that, we don't lose out on network again. And the third one, incidentally, is network infrastructure, especially in rural areas. Today, people are having access to mobile phones, digital technology in the rural areas, but it's still not as good as we expect it to be. Data available. I'm talking to you from Zaria, and Zaria is supposed to be as urban can be, but yet we still have challenges with network infrastructure. And then finally, is also funding to scale Agri-Tech, because Agri-Tech needs scale. If you talk to 3-4 farmers, I'm not sure you can actually justify your investment. But we need to scale Agri-Tech to a large number of farmers and large offering for it to be to make meaningful sense. And then how do we fund that scaling? It's easy to develop an app or something that meets the needs of 3, 4, 10, 100 farmers. But when we are talking of 40 million farmers who are resource poor and who need access to technology, how do we get to them? How do we reach them in their rural areas? We already have challenges with infrastructure. How do we get to them? So those are 4 areas that I've mentioned. I'm sure my fellow panelists have other things to talk about, but I'll just stop there before so that we can talk about other things. Thank you, Samira.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akwini. And that was really insightful. Mr. Aki made a statement that some people argue about, like climate is yet to stay. I know that there are other people that would argue that there's nothing like climate change. So over to you, to give Mr. Rufus to also talk about on this topic. Once again, the question is, in the face of a changing climate, what are the major challenges that the agri-tech sector is currently grappling with? Mr. Rufus, do you have something to add to that?
Thank you, Samira. I think I can actually capture it very well. And I just want to add, like he has mentioned, funding. Funding is a key aspect that we need to look into critically. It's not cheap to fund climate change mitigation or adaptation solutions, especially when you're using technology as well. But I also want to echo more into what Ayo mentioned earlier. Yes, Ayo has given some statistics about some major climate change impact that we're likely to see, and that we're already seeing in Nigeria, like the flood that happened last year, drought also here and there. I want to also add that as a nation as well, it's not only impacting on the smallholder farmers or people out there. As a nation, this needs to be a critical point of concern for the government, because according to climate change impact organization called Climate Action Digest, they revealed that Nigeria is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change impact, and we are one of the least ready to address these issues. It's going to cost us about 6 to 30% of our GDP by 2050. That's about 100 to 460 billion US dollars. That's a lot of impact. And if we look at it coming granular as well, the impact is most felt by communities that are poor and farmers that are poor, because they lack the financial resources as well to either adopt or seek some of the solutions or put them into practice. And people that are designing different solutions for this space are not charity organizations. A lot of them are social enterprise or other entrepreneurs that are in business to actually make money so they can sustain the viability of such business. And also to add that we talked a lot about the impact of this on the crop sector, like flood and the likes. It's also being seen heavily also in the livestock sector as well. We know what's going on with the farmer header crisis and how climate change impact related access to water and access to pasture is actually affecting the nomadic headers to move from one location to the other, running from area where there's high drought and there's no water and pasture to areas where they feel there's some greener pasture and there's water for them, running down south. And in that process, they get to encounter or meet and exchange with farmers that are actually growing their own crops. And this has led to so many deaths in the country and also a lot of displacement. So it's a serious concern, not just to the smallholder farmers or the solution providers or the donor community or NGO community or private sector alone. It's a national crisis that we need to address, and the entire ecosystem needs to be well looked into and see how we can incentivize every sector of the ecosystem to ensure that even solutions that are being designed can thrive and can actually bring forth the kind of solution that we want to see going forward. Thank you. Just like that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rufus, for that. That's really correct in the sense that if the more the effects of the climate change, the more crisis that occurs, and Nigeria is really, being affected. But I would like to add this to this question so that the other panelists who are going to answer this question can also try to come from that angle. Mr. Rufus mentioned something around Nigeria is the most vulnerable countries to climate change impact, and we are the least prepared. We've had reports and we've had research in different reports and different research which says that says that Nigeria does not emit as much emissions as other, like the US and in Canada and the rest. But yet we are part of the people that are being affected that much, and part of the people that need to provide the solutions to curb climate change. What would you say about that? I'll start with you, Ms. Titilola. Hello, Mr. Titilola, can you hear us? Sorry, Ms. Titilope, sorry. Can you hear us? My bad. Ms. Titilope, can you hear us? Okay, while she tries to join, I'll go over to you, Mr. Sam.
Thanks, Samira. And hi, everyone again. I will not go into the challenges that they have already been discussed. I would like to summarize maybe the challenges that face most of the smallholder farmers amid the changes in weather patterns, also the COVID. I think these days we're talking about the 3 C's. There's conflicts, there's COVID, and there's climate, the 3 C's that are affecting smallholder farmers. In terms of the variability in climate and climate resilience, I feel the biggest challenge that is facing farmers is not even finance per se. I would say is information asymmetry, where most of the farmers, they are not aware of the existing solutions that are there in the ecosystem. The suppliers, or that is the supply side, is also not aware of the solution that the demand side that need. So that information gap, the information asymmetry, I feel is the biggest challenge that is impacting productivity. If you look at most of the farmers, I think the biggest challenge is they don't have capacity, they don't know of the existence of new technologies. I think someone talked about climate smart agriculture, which is a new term for most small-scale farmers. They don't know what is that. So they don't know that there is the existence of drought-resistant varieties, for example, as inputs. In terms of financing, they don't know that there are microfinance institutions, there are other organizations, there are aggregators who are offering finance. And the same case goes to the supply side. There's a lot of information gaps there also. They always think that agriculture is risky. So I feel information asymmetry is the biggest gap that is aiding the issues we have on climate change. We also look at some of the tools that were being used in the 19th century are the same ones that farmers are using even now. So I feel there's a very big gap in terms of getting information, farmers' capacity, and all these challenges are the ones that are making it difficult to improve productivity amid the challenges of climate change. Maybe in response to the question you've asked about Nigeria being one of the countries that has been having a lot of, there's a lot of high risk, especially on greenhouse emissions, impact of the carbon dioxide footprint. And then you talked about, given the fact that maybe there's, the country emits low, but in terms of the efforts that are needed to combat that, yeah, of course, there's a need that every country does its part. So I feel, going back to the question I was talking about information, on the information asymmetry, I feel that, of course, the solutions exist, and there's a lot of startups in Nigeria trying to do a lot of most of these activities. But again, if you look at adoption of the technologies that they advocate, it's very limited to the small-scale farmers. Essentially, there are challenges, of course, of getting that information to smallholder farmers. And that's why we feel there's a big opportunity for digital technologies to be able to support getting information to small-scale farmers. A lot of organizations, of course, are taking measures in terms of trying to combat greenhouse emissions. But there is a major challenge, of course, especially on the climate financing. Very few organizations are offering climate financing. Examples like carbon credits or carbon sequestration is something which is new. It's a new thematic area in agriculture. So you'll find that that kind of information is not available to most ecosystem players. And I feel the main solution for countries is to support policies and mechanisms to have more information getting to all ecosystem players. Thank you, Samira.
Thank you so much for that. Ms. Titilope, are you here now?
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry, I've been battling with network issues. Yeah, so, all right. So thank you so much, Samira, for the question. I totally agree with you that Nigeria and indeed Africa is really vulnerable to the emissions of or the dangerous effects from climate crisis, in as much as we do not as much produce that amount of destruction on the climate, on the environment. And I think it's also, this also gives us the opportunity for us to canvas for climate finance and climate justice. It's important that the big emitters of this waste, they must step up to domestic climate actions quickly and build new climate economy that can help African countries, be less vulnerable to issues regarding climate crisis. It's important that the countries, the developed countries and emerging economies must take action to help Nigeria and indeed Africa to deliver investments that will bring, to ensure that the goals for the Paris Agreement is reached, and ensure that we are not the recipients of the damages to the environment.
Thank you so much for that. And then lastly, for this general question, we go over to Mr. Abdulsamad.
Thank you very much. And I think the other panelists have already spoken. And but I viewed this question from two perspectives. Number one is the one that have to do with the farmers, who are the major 80% of the production we do. And the challenges is directly affecting this 80% of who are smallholder farmers. And I think Rufus have made mention of these challenges, which includes the flood, the dry spell, and other issues. But the one I think we have not talked about is now the Agri-Tech service providers who are trying to solve these problems. And though Sam did make mention of some of it, is that the adoption, right? Most of the solutions that we generate is focused on farmers adopting it, because as much as Nigeria and Africa is in developing stage, we have a lot of solutions already. I think we have around 20 research institutions in Nigeria, and they are all trying to solve the same problem of climate change. But the information is not there out to the farmers, the smallholder farmers. And even the technology solutions that are being provided by these technology organizations, like, of course, we have the Tribe Agri and other organizations that are trying to solve this problem, is that there is initial cost, which I think Rufus also made mention. We have, I'll give an example where we have these solar-powered irrigation machines. The initial cost cannot be afforded by smallholder farmers. So we have the challenge that the farmers, the socioeconomic characteristics of our farmers might make it difficult for us to build resilience among the smallholder farmers. Then on the hand of the agricultural technology service provider is that while you're building this solution, probably most of our solution comes from Lagos, where we have the technology companies there. But there is a wide variation between the purchasing power of our smallholder farmers, which is not, because the information is not available, the data is not there. Even those ones that are there are not reliable. So you have that when these solutions have been generated, when you come down to northern part, let's say from Lagos, is developed in Lagos, and you come down to Sokoto, for instance, you find that this solution might not be adaptable. So I'm looking at the problem from tech solution that the data is not available, and we have also to put the socioeconomic characteristics of the farmers and their purchasing power into consideration while you're building solution. One of the resilient technology is insurance, and insurance have not been really adopted. Most of the tech solution providers providing these services are facing serious challenges, and it's because it's not easily seen. This technology is not easily seen. So farmers have to, the awareness creation of these solutions, I think we'll have to spend so much there. The government have to come by, and also the development organization. And I think one other thing is the rural infrastructure, because most of the tech solutions solving this problem, the climate change problem, rely so much on the data collection system, the ability of the farmer to be able to use the digital technologies. But they don't have, most of them don't even have, and the infrastructure is not there. You go to some rural areas where you don't have even network up to date. So these are the challenges, I think, from both sides, facing the farmer, which is very well known, and these other ones that are listed that are facing the ag-tech companies. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Now that we've know all the challenges that is occurring, and we've talked about several things on sensitivity of weather, network infrastructure, initial cost, and we are one of the most vulnerable countries on climate change. I'll go back to you, Mr. Samuel. So based on this, I know that you've worked severally with development in the development space, and you currently work with Mexico, and you guys have funded and run projects on different climate-related projects. So I would say that what are some of the most successful agri-tech models implemented globally on a global scale, and what key factors contribute to their success? So let's even know like currently what is being done globally before we then come back to the Nigerian sector?
Thanks, Samira. Well, there are a lot of schools of thought on that question. If you're talking about the Agri-Tech models that exist, people will have different opinions. But I would like to classify them into maybe three major categories. When you're talking about an Agri-Tech platform, from my experience working in the Nigeria ecosystem as well as East Africa, I feel what we've seen most models are on either is a single touch point model. So one will have a platform that has a single touch point kind of service to support small scale farmers. So I'm imagining a case of say an ag startup that is offering farmers with farm advisory services. So like they have a USSD or an SMS system where they send out information on good agricultural practices to their smallholder farmers as the only kind of touch point they're having with those farmers. So that is a major classification of a kind of a single point where we have a lot of these, and I think Nigeria is the largest in terms of ag startups in Africa, and a majority of these startups fall in that category. Farm advisory, and maybe one that is offering maybe only insurance as a touch point. So that is one major classification. I also think about a platform or an Agri-Tech platform that is offering some multi-touch points. So a number of multi-touch points. Maybe Thrive Agri would fall here. So it could be offering inputs, it could be offering farm advisory, even a marketplace. But then there's that classification where I would call it an end-to-end service kind of model, where this is now a platform. And this is what differentiates between a platform and an application. A platform should be able, in terms of capability, should be able to communicate between a consumer, that's from the demand side and the supply side. Examples of successful platforms in the world, of course, all of us know things like Uber, could be like Amazon, could be all these major e-commerce platforms and some of the platforms that exist that provide all those kind of, so a platform should be able to provide even feedback. So in terms of examples of models that are existing, Agri-Tech models, so they could go even up to 10, but majority of them are mainly one, as I mentioned earlier, farm advisory Agri-Tech model. So essentially the platform just offers the services that include farmer extension services, training farmers. And then of course there's peer-to-peer learning kind of Agri-Tech models. An example I think in Africa is one large one that is also in East Africa and Nigeria called WeFarm, where they used to offer peer-to-peer learning. So farmers can be able to learn from other farmers on best agricultural practices. And then of course there's digital finance services kind of model that's mainly that we have a lot of guys doing insurance. There are a lot of MNOs right now offering either some payment services, another kind of transaction-based kind of services to farmers on finance. And you will find a lot of microfinance institutions that are offering credit in agriculture. They fall under this category. That's their kind of model. Guys like, for example, Eka Africa, the Nigeria trying out Takafu insurance for the North region, and others were Pula and others were offering insurance, for example. All these fall under that category. So that's their model. And then there's of course the digital marketplace models or Agri-Tech models. So these are guys offering anything from inputs, and Thrive Agri is here. If you are connecting your farmers to inputs, we are connecting them to markets, telling them about market prices. So all those services being offered, it's a kind of a digital marketplace Agri-Tech model. And of course, even guys offering e-commerce platforms. We have quite a number. If you go to the fast moving goods, we have, like I mentioned, all those international ones that are globally offering this kind of services. Like you can go online and buy you can buy, for example, you wanted to buy some household goods and all that. All these are some kind of Agri-Tech models that exist. And of course, there are those offering traceability. So they could be standalone, as I mentioned, in the 3 major classifications. So there are guys called Fair Foods. They offer solutions for you to be able to offer traceability, transparency in the system, in the value chain, so that there's a trust between the consumer and, of course, the producer and the suppliers. And then there are also those offering mechanization. So mechanization Agri-Tech models. I know Hello Tractor is quite famous in Nigeria. So that's also an Agri-Tech model. And maybe finally, those offering logistics. So like the Uber in the global region. So we have those in Agri-Tech that are offering logistics services like Army Truck. We have even some of them offering both the conventional logistics like Sandy, also doing some work in agriculture. So I don't want to go much into it, but those are the main Agri-Tech models globally, as well as going down even to Nigeria, looking at the main classification of those models. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Now that we're listening to, can you all hear me?
Hi, Samira. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Thanks for explaining the global successful project that is being done globally. And so now, based on that thought and based on that, what Mr. Samuel have said in a general basis, I'd like to go to another question for everybody to answer. And I know that we will soon be running out of time. But the question is, now globally, we can see that in other countries, especially in the likes of the US and other places, there are agri-tech sectors that are working to solve these solutions. Back to Nigeria, what are the opportunities and challenges that exist in integrating climate smart solutions throughout the agricultural value chain from production to distribution and beyond? Currently in Nigeria, based on global practices and the rest, what are those current, opportunities and challenges that exist in integrating climate solutions throughout the agricultural value chain? And now we'll start with Ms. Titilope. Are you here? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. All right, thanks for that question. I would first start with the challenges, then move to the opportunities. So the first thing I would like to highlight is the fact that there's the issue of adoption and awareness among farmers. The farmers need to be aware of climate smart solutions, and they need to understand the benefits they want to they are supposed to adopt. Bringing to mind a video report that I was editing sometime where some of my reporters in my organization traveled to the southern Nigeria, and in their conversation, they were asking the farmers about some crops. And one of the conversations that's really struck me was the fact that the farmers are not even aware of what climate, they know, they experience it, but they don't know what climate change. They ask them what is climate change or what's climate crisis, and they are not aware. So if you're even talking about the main issue of the problem and not to talk of the solution itself, there's sort of like a dichotomy in between. So they need there's need for farmers to be aware, first of all, of problems, then before switching to the solutions aspect. So many farmers particularly small-scale farmers in developing regions, they have limited access to information and resources, and it's important to, create awareness, provide trainings for them to understand what exactly is going on, like being aware that, okay, there's this, you're aware of the issue, but they don't even know, they don't know the term about of it. Another thing that comes into my mind, which is GMO as well. For instance, I'm aware that the Nigerian government gave out genetically modified BT cowpeas, and they were just given, the farmers were just given these crops, and they just planted it, and they were asked if they know about GMOs, and they are not aware, but they just know that the crops are, according to them, the crops are better for them. They harvest all their the beans on time. It's bigger, the produce is much, but they are just not aware. I mean, for a small scale farmer, they're more interested in the efficiency of the production than probably knowing how it's the definition or what the whole entire thing is about. But it's also important that the investors or the government who are dishing out these new climate solutions, they first of all tell them about these new products or these new crops before, making them have an option to whether to use them or not. So I think that is one aspect we need to look at. Another thing to look out for is there's the issue of the value chain coordination, in the sense that climate smart solutions often involve multiple actors across the agricultural value chain. And I mean, coming from the farmers to the input suppliers, to distributors, to processors, to retailers. I know for each of these actors in the value chain, they also want to have their stake, their benefits from this emerging climate solutions. So the need to, there might be some sort of dichotomy as to how to balance partnership or collaborations amongst these actors to achieve a long-term benefit. So a bit away from it, but it's important that even if you are trying to introduce climate smart solutions to these actors, it's important that they are aware of how it benefits them equally. For instance, like I said, I want to deviate to a particular report where is a community, Gate community in Nasarawa State, where herders and farmers, they live in the same place, they work in the same place. We all already know the background or the history of herders and farmers clashes in Nigeria, but in this particular community is a completely different story. Linking it back to what I'm trying to say is that it's important for them to be able to understand the benefits that aligns for the both of them, and for them to work for a greater purpose. Now let's move to the opportunities. So first of all, it's the opportunities that exist in climate smart solutions from production to distribution is financial incentives. I mean, we've seen government, development agencies, financial institutions recognizing the importance of climate smart agriculture, and they are providing like financial incentives to support its adoptions. There are funding programs, grants, subsidies, low interest loans available to farmers. For instance, in 2022, the US Department of Agriculture's Foreign Agricultural Service awarded $300,000 to 6 US universities just to partner on climate smart agriculture. So we're seeing more countries, understand the need for climate smart solutions and the need to invest in it. And we're also seeing that even in Nigeria as well, the Nigerian government is beginning to recognize that you need to include climate smart solutions to sort of develop the sector. I mean, the 8 months ago, the federal government said it was exploring options for climate finance and building partnerships that would drive the country's emissions reduction ambitions and adaptation, and as well mitigation of the climate change. So, so they are focusing on sustainable funding mechanism that drives nature-based solutions. But pending when we know what the new government has in stock for the agricultural sector, I think the climate smart solutions bet financial incentives and support, because governments are beginning to understand that there is need to have a shift or a shift in their mindset. Another thing to look out for is the fact that it also enhances the productivity of farmers. Climate smart solutions help farmers to increase their productivity, build resilience to climate change. So by adopting practices like precision agriculture, improved water management, it helps the farmers to know to optimize their resource use and to reduce crop loss, and enables farmers to identify potential problems with their fields, helps them to inspect viability, soil texture and the likes with drone technology and real-time soil monitoring sensors. So these are some of the opportunities that exist in climate smart solutions, from production to agriculture in the agricultural process.
Thank you so much for that. That was really, really insightful. You said so much. I'll go back to Mr. Abdulsamad. Do you have anything to say on this?
Yes, yes, thank you very much. I think I will still ride on what's working and then talk about. So there have been success stories in terms of adoption of climate smart technology, just like it was mentioned by one of our colleagues here, panelists here. A whole package, just like he made mention, have been gaining traction, where this, because farmers, just like the last speaker did talk about, don't have the information, but embedding it in a more like embedding the solution into a package while providing input, for instance, what Agri-Tech does. While you're providing input credit to the farmers, you embed this type of services, say insurance as a cover to the farmers. So they're adopting the package while also trying to build the resilience by adopting what you're giving them. Then there's also the one they call the market-driven approach, where things have to be market-driven, because once they're not market-driven, at a certain point in time, we'll definitely have to drop. So if the government really wants to work, then there should be a payment for adopting or for contributing to the solution. This is related now to the question you asked me. Then, because we were promoting a system of climate adaptation or resilience in rice production. So there is the question of, after the farmer have adopted all this technology to produce, there is no market incentive for the farmer that have adopted. So while we do know that it's a responsibility for everyone, so this constraint comes, but also there is a large opportunity in it, because it increased the production. Say, for instance, now pest and disease resistance variety. I think this is a high demanded commodity now, or will I say input, for seed, for organizations working in the seed sector. Then we have also technologies that allows farmers to be able to detect pests and diseases. This is also gaining traction, because yes, these are physical things that the farmers, away from the climate change, it's affecting. They are pain points for the farmer. Then we also have the other thing that I think that is also working is the information dissemination and access to finance. Combining access to finance to access to the information on climate smart techniques is also gaining traction for the smallholder farmers, and it's been adopted, which is also nice because yes, they know that finance is the pain point for them. And while you're disseminating this information and providing access to finance, solving their problems somehow, it has shown to be effective. And also, this helps market. But for market, I think what the scope have been very, very minimal because only those who are adopt, for instance, our example here is on adopting low or no pest use of agrochemicals on production. But here for Nigeria, there have been no demand for this type of commodities. So it's only when it comes to export that, for instance, Japan requires zero chemicals for sesame. So this is when farmers, because they are sure this demand you buy or take these commodities, they are willing now to do something that reduce the global greenhouse emission. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Over to you. Thank you so much for that insight. Over to you, Mr. Aki.
Thank you, Samira. Just to mention very quickly, we all appreciate the value of technology. We appreciate the value of digital technology, as it were. But reality is also the fact that a lot of the farmers in these rural areas do not have direct access to this to the digital technology. So what I wanted to mention as an opportunity, which is something OCP is also looking into, is how do we extend technology to farmers? How do we ensure that technology might not necessarily be in the hands of farmers, but can be in the hands of an extension agent that reaches the farm on a regular basis? There are quite a number of people on this panel that we work with. We work with Extension Africa, for example. What can we do to put technology in the hands of extension agents whose profile are a lot better than the average farmer? Okay, so they're a lot more technological aware. Their adaptability to technology and to digital innovation is better. Their access is better. How can we do that? Data shows that today in rural areas, there is probably less than 10%. 10% of people in rural areas have access to internet technology. So how do we get this to them? So in talking about this policy, when we talk about what government should do, when we talk about, there's also the need for private sector participation and partnerships to build, to extend this technology to farmers. I would always have, I've said that several programs, that development of technology is not what we lack as it is in Africa and Nigeria in particular. They are quite, one of the panelists listed out quite a number of innovative technologies that have been built over the years, even in Nigeria, that's working here. But the question really is, how do we get it in the hands of the farmers? How do we make sure that the farmers experiences this technology? And like Thrive, like Ayo said in his presentation, what Thrive is doing is fantastic. So can you bundle technology with other provisions and other services that you're providing to the farmer as a bundle offering? Can you also ensure that he has access to weather technology, weather data? Can you ensure that he has weather recommendations? Can you ensure that you have different things, whether it's an online access? Can we put the online access in the hands of an extension agent who talks directly with the farmers and ensure that the farmer has access to that technology? So I was just going to mention that that's one area that I think we really need to look at. OCP, for example, is doing a lot around building outlets, retail outlets in rural underserved communities, in ensuring that there are extension agents that extend this kind of technology to farmers. And we're doing it in partnership with a lot of other organizations who can bring in whatever value that we have, whatever technology that we have, and ensure that the last mile is actually covered. So that farmer in that rural area who has no access, little or no access to technology, can actually walk up to a store, an outlet, or an extension agent that we call an agri-promoter, and then be able to encounter a lot of data, encounter a lot of recommendation, encounter a lot of advice, agronomic advice. And I think that's a key thing that we also all need to participate and, to focus on and also to give a lot of attention to. Thank you, Samira.
Thank you so much. I would come back to you because you just mentioned things that OCP are currently doing. But before that, Mr. Sama, do you have anything on this?
Sure. So I think I'll be doing my closing summary because I also want to drop off. I think Akin has mentioned almost everything. In East Africa, Swahili, we say, amemaliza kila kitu. It means like he's completely finished everything. So just maybe to summarize on those opportunities and the challenges on integrating, especially digital technologies and other solutions, innovative solutions. So of course, the opportunities that exist in the ecosystem there are quite a number, because they bring a lot of hello, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Who is unmuted? Sorry, the person unmuted should please mute. Continue, Mr. Sama.
Okay, so I was talking about there are quite a number of substantial opportunities for smallholder farmers for using digital solutions as well as other innovative solutions. Of course, they create about transparency. There's, of course, they open access for new markets. They improve efficiency in terms of the production bit and the selling. And of course, I think one important key factor that we could not maybe mention is especially an opportunity for young people and especially women being included in agriculture production. So in fact, I think there's an FAO research that showed that if more women participate in productive agriculture production, that we could have an increased productivity of about 2 to 5% in terms of increased production. So I feel digital solutions as well as other innovative solutions, they offer a chance for youth who especially find that agriculture is not, it doesn't bring a lot of income, so they'll be able to see the opportunities if they are part of the value chains, as well as women are able to access knowledge and how to use technology. So I feel there's a lot of opportunities. In terms of challenges that exist, of course, for adopting these solutions, of course, the main challenges, of course, especially on data sharing. Someone mentioned about data sharing. So there's data protection policies that need to be brought on board. There is, of course, there's need to do, I think, bundling. Bundling of services is quite critical, so that each startup, for example, that has an innovative solution can be able to focus on their core business. If, for example, Thrive Agri is providing, for example, farm advisory, providing agri inputs, and they need to bring in an insurance to the farmers. They don't have to do that themselves. They can bring in a Pula, Aneka Africa kind of partner who can be able to do that for them. So bundling of services can be able to help with these challenges that exist. Of course, challenges in adoption of these solutions, they are affected by other factors, not only just economical factors, but they are also, and when I mean economical factors, they could be issues with infrastructure, issues with connectivity, mobile penetration, but I feel there's the sustainability and scalability of these solutions will depend mainly on if the ecosystem players are able to work together through what I think we mentioned about bundling of services, can be able to address a lot of these challenges. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Thanks, Samir. Bye.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you so much. Before I go back to Mr. Akin, I can see that we have some hands up, like Mr. Abdurrahman. If you have a question, just put it on the chat and I'll read it out before this. So if you have a question, if you have questions now, put it on the chat or put it on the YouTube. For those on YouTube, put it on the comment section on YouTube, and I'll pick it up. And as we're talking with the panelists, I will read out your questions because I'm very sure that as some of the questions you're going to ask is part of the questions we intend asking. So if you have questions, just put it on the chat for the Zoom chat and the YouTube chat, and I will pick it up from there. Thank you very much. Abdurrahman, I can still see your hand up, so just put your questions there and I will pick it up from there. And so over to you, Mr. Akin. Currently, you've talked about what OCP is currently doing. We know that you guys are already working on climate programs and funding opportunities. Based on this, and you've talked about a lot about financing, what innovative financing mechanism can be explored to support agri-tech startups focused on climate mitigation and adaptation?
Thank you very much, Samira, once again. I think that when you look at it from a financial mechanism, it's not just to finance these startups, but most importantly also to support the startup. So what are we doing as OCP to support the startups? And I'll talk about three things. Of course, it involves financing, but to a great extent, what we try to do is partnerships that help institutions, startups, whether startups or mid-range institutions that can grow and scale, and move them from proof of concept till they get to go-to-market strategies. So three things I would mention very quickly. One, we're developing digital solutions in partnerships with solution providers. So definitely we're working on can we work on these solutions with startups, with other organizations? And we have done, a great deal on that over the last few years. One of the solutions we've done is Udongo, which you mentioned earlier on, which is a platform that aims to unlock digital opportunities in the agri sector, but also spur collaborations between actors in the value chain. And we're looking at various features, climate smart features, climate smart agricultural innovation that will help the farmer. So we're talking about precision farming. We're talking about fertility, soil fertility, understanding nutrients requirement for soil. What can we do? So can we do some level of soil profiling so that fertilizer recommendation will be based on specific profiling of the soil of the farmer? Can we look at business management features? Someone talked earlier on about product catalog. The Odongo has plans for that. Product catalog, network business affiliation, inventory management. Can we also look at farm management practices? How do we take data for the farmer database? How do we help him geolocalize his data? How does he calculate, the area of portion of land that he's working on? Can we also look at agronomy features? Can we give agronomic advice when he needs it? Can we provide weather advisory data? And it gets exciting with things like weather advisory data. For example, we partnered with an organization to be able to provide weather advisory data, but not just provide weather advisory data. What we did was to say, when that weather advisory data is predictive advisory data, basically. So when you get the predictive advisory data, what does the farmer do based on that data? So do you just send the data to the farmer, or do you send recommendations of what he should do? So when the data says, rain is going to come, or it's going to be delayed, or rain is not here yet, or the rains are coming on so date, how do you get the farmer to work or to have action based on the data that he has?
Hello, Mr. Akin today. Hello, Mr. Akin, we've lost you a bit. Okay, welcome back.
Sorry, I'm back. I think it's getting to a point where we need to speak about network connectivity. Basically, so can we put all all that into recommendations to the farmer. So that's one. And like I rightly said, so in terms of being able to suggest this to farmers as a solution, that's one thing that OCP is doing. The second thing is also we're supporting a lot of agri-tech innovation. So we're saying supporting the incubation, acceleration of other agri-tech ideas. So for example, in 2019, a project called Impulse Accelerators worked with more than 10 startup companies and took them through a 3-month program from a proof of concept stage till they got to go-to-market strategies. And this was done carefully and consistently. And we did that in 2019. And even this year, we're also working on doing another program called the Farming Innovation Program, which we have just concluded in Senegal, and we're coming to Nigeria. What do we want to focus on? How do we foster digital innovation to a prosperous agriculture? And what are the areas to look at? AI optimization for agricultural inputs. How do we ensure fintech access for financing? How do we ensure artificial intelligence and IoT to help boost crop yields? Tech solutions for monitoring and controlling pests and diseases. Digital solutions to foster agricultural and food value chains. And finally, what about solutions that will empower smallholder farmers? So we're focusing on these themes and these areas in looking for startups and lovely ideas that can focus, that can help. So what do we want to do to these people? We want to look at, okay, how can we do in-person coaching for these startups? How can we do some level of online coaching for these startups? How can we do mentorship for these startups? How can we ensure that the proof of concept can be tested? So can we take the startup to a set of what we're looking at to be able to work that out? And finally, what we've done also, I've mentioned 3 things. 1, support for solutions, which we've done in partnership with other companies. 2, support for startups themselves, which we have also done. And in all these things, some level of finances is involved. And finally, we have also built what we call a phygital offering, which is a physical offering or physical structure combined with digital innovation. So, for example, we have about 135 what we call a farm and fortune hub all around the country. And what are those hubs meant to do? They are in underserved locations, close enough to farming communities. We are saying hubs that are as close enough as 1 to 5 kilometers to a local and major farming communities. And what does that form? It forms an aggregation hub where farmers can come to and get, advice. So agronomic advice, digital encounters, digital innovation, they can encounter a lot of things. And these are across 22 states. And even, we're going to increase to another 7 states this year. And then in addition to doing that, we're also putting foot soldiers, like I mentioned earlier on, who do extension service and can put technology in the hands of farmers. What we've just said in essence is, can we ensure that while we help startups to be able to get this kind of innovation and lovely ideas, can we also create platforms for those ideas to encounter farmers so that we don't just put those ideas in our city centers and we're thinking about them, but farmers are not encountering them. So can the farmer come to a farm and fortune hub, for example, and see and have an encounter with certain advisory data or weather data? And finally, we also do TV and radio shows to ensure that some of these things can be put into small packages, documentaries, and farmers can enjoy, encounter these kind of advisory data. I was going to say this lastly. One of the speakers rightly mentioned that information dissemination is our biggest challenge. We in the city centers understand this thing, but it's not getting to the farmers. So that's why OCP is very interested in building that last mile distribution of not just products, but also services and digital technology to farmers. Thank you very much, Samira.
Thank you so much. We will soon be rounding up. Before that, we still have some questions to go. Thank you so much, Mr. Akin, for that. We will are going to the next question. I can see that someone has asked the question, but I'll put that out then during the Q&A session. Over to you, Mr. Abdulsamad. Currently, as an agri-tech sector company, what are the potential barriers? We've talked about finance a lot. So what are the potential barriers between agri-tech startups and financial institutions and development agencies in accessing funding and technical assistance for climate-related initiatives. Especially the fact that we keep saying climate change initiatives, and when companies, agri-tech companies, carry out things like things related to climate, just answer the question. I forgot to. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Samira, for the question. So I think if I get the question correctly, you talked about the potential barriers and opportunities, right, for collaboration between tech, startups, financial institutions, and development. I think I will start with the opportunities. One thing that is very clear is to understand the strength of each of the organization. Number one is the financial institutions. Their aim in the whole of, even if they're supporting in climate smart technology dissemination, the whole aim is to reach more customers that can access their financial products and services, including insurance. Then you have the development agency, whose aim is just to increase the potential, disseminate the information about climate and build the resilience of smallholder farmers. While the tech startup also have similar desire with the financial institution. So there is this kind of alignment of objective or required output and impact from all the various sector, financial, the development, and the private or the agri-tech startup. So there is, I think my colleague did talk about the opportunity here that have doing partnership, right? Bringing each person coming together to bring his own strong point, I think have been enhancing dissemination and adoption of climate smart technology. In the sense that I'll give you a typical example of what Extension Africa is doing in this regards, that there are some costs that cannot be paid by the startup company. So when the development organization who is focused basically more on developmental goals, it tends to be easy for the startup to be able to cover such cost by partnering with this development organization. I will make instance with, for instance, Haifa. If you have Hello Tractor coming together with Haifa, because Haifa is not for profit, so they are willing to spend some money, but Hello Tractor is providing a solution which it needs a return on. So although Hello Tractor is not longer a startup, but just an example that can allow listeners to understand. Also, for Extension Africa, we partnered with Agra, where we bring youths to almost where we're training 1,000 to reach 300,000. We're training 1,000 extension agents to reach 300,000 smallholder farmers with climate resilient technology, so that they build their resilience. And this partnership have allowed us to be able to build the necessary structure, the information dissemination, which does not bring money, of course, in the short run for the company, but it has allowed the system to be able to build the necessary traction that it requires. And the challenge here, it's the conflict of interest most times, and this happens because of the challenge, because most of the solutions the startups are bringing are easily replicable, in the sense that you have these big companies where once they identify this is the solution. For instance, I'll make another instance with financial XYZ financial institutions that is going now to do field monitoring, which already we have a lot of startups, agri startups that are willing to provide these services. So you have that if each company or each segment did not maintain his or her own capacity, the strength, you see that there will be non-alignment there will be a lot of conflict of interest, which is hindering the partnership. And the funny thing here is that we're all trying to reach the same customer, who is the smallholder farmers, with these solutions we are all providing. So I think as a recommendation is that we can all look at our strengths, right? And everybody to specialize in that. But when we have all companies all trying to do everything at the same time, you're in the input, you're in the financial sector, you're trying to also provide in the market. So you see that especially for startups that cannot compete comfortably or favorably in this, definitely it becomes a lot of challenge for the startup. So yes, just like I said, a lot of partnership is partnership with this and collaboration. Hello, can you?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you very much for that. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So thank you very much for that answer. That was really insightful. Because of time, I'm going to Mr. Tilope. So what would you experience in climate advocacy and media in general? How can Agri-Tech startups effectively communicate their value proposition to attract investors interested in climate mitigation and adaptation? About financing. How can Agri-Tech startups actually attract this financing?
Thank you, Samira. So I would like to say, I would like to divide it into direct and indirect approaches. First of all, let me start with the direct approach. Say you are going straight to see an investor, and you have a meeting, and one of the ways in which you can attract investors in this regard is using the having a compelling narrative. Agri-Tech startups need to develop compelling narratives in whatever materials they can, particularly with storytelling. It's using a compelling narrative helps create some sort of urgency and importance of climate change mitigation and adaptation in the agricultural sector. And it's important to use, for instance, say in a video, it's important to emphasize the role that innovative Agri-Tech solutions play in addressing challenges and creating a sustainable future for agriculture. And again, with the use of powerful storytelling techniques, you can actually engage investors emotionally and intellectually. So you can share case studies, success stories of farmers. I watched the video, the video that sort of was played at the beginning of this particular event, and such kind of video stories, for instance, narrowing in on a farmer's life. I've gone through some of the innovative things that your organization does, and for instance, narrowing into a life of a farmer that has benefited largely from what you have done, starting going to their household, telling the story of how their life was before and getting to meet you, and after having partnered with you, how their lives have transformed, how it has impacted their sorts of livelihoods, their children, and all that. That sort of creates a connection or an emotion to investors that this is actually impacting the lives of people, and they would see the need to want to invest with you. So you can use testimonials of people, their interviews, video content to demonstrate tangible impacts on ground. Then another measure or approach is a direct approach is, of course, participating in relevant events and conferences. It's important that Agri-Tech startups actively participate in their industry events, conferences that are focused on climate change, on sustainable agriculture, technology innovation. I mean, such platforms provide opportunities to showcase the work that you do, and for investors, because in this kind of meetings or events, you'll find investors on ground as well there. So it serves as an opportunity for you to, show potential investors what you do. Is an opportunity for you to network with industry leaders and as well gain media coverage. So it's very relevant that Agri-Tech startups, join in on conversations, events, and conferences that promote or broadcast the things that they do. Then an indirect approach would be collaborating with influencers and experts within the field. There are a lot of climate influencers. For instance, at the top of my head, I know of Temilade Salami, who is into the whole climate space thing, and she's also like a media influencer. So if you have collaborations with people of like followings who have grown audiences that understand the importance of climate solutions, or have a strong presence in the media, you can collaborate with them to amplify the message the message about Agri-Tech solutions value proposition, and encouraging these influencers to and sort of share the things that you do as an organization. And someone with such a large following, we definitely most likely have probably an investor who is also following them as well, and they get to see the work that you do. Then aside that, you can also leverage your social media platforms, digital platforms, to effectively communicate the value that you're proposing to a larger audience using engaging content such as videos, infographics, explainers, how-to videos. People want to know how things can help them, basically. There are a lot of problems out there, but there's also farmers who make use of social media platforms. If they know that your platform is a go-to source of where they can get solutions to the problems they are facing, maybe you creating it in form of a how-to video explaining to them this is how to mitigate this particular issue you have in your farm. Of course, it will draw people. You have more. It will boost your following, as well as your platform becomes like a go-to platform for issues regarding climate smart solutions, or how to mitigate certain dangerous effects on the climate. So actively engage with your audience, respond to inquiries. It helps to foster conversations about solutions. And of course, another thing to the Agri-Tech startups needs to recognize is the fact that you also need to collaborate with media professionals like myself. There's a way that a journalist would be able to communicate messages that you might not be able to communicate, because you have more of like the technical explanation of things, but the media personnel will know how to break down what they call it, your messages in simpler form. So you can sort of have offer exclusive interviews, or issue press releases, or have opinion pieces on media platforms. And when you're putting your organization's brand or organization's work out there on a notable media platform, of course, it's also like putting the eye, ensuring that your products or your services is also in the eyes of potential investors. So you will need to provide journalists or collaborate with journalists to share compelling data, success stories, and also to possibly access key stakeholders within the industry to put your what you do out there. Probably if your organization has done like a research in a particular field, you can invite a journalist to do like a special report or an investigation. If you found like you have recommendations or findings that you feel that a journalist can explore, you can, bring a journalist on board to, tell the story from another perspective. And of course, having such on a media platform, a notable media platform, of course, will also boost your chances of being seen by potential investors. And of course, we cannot rule out the fact that you need to also collaborate with people, with like-minded organizations, collaborate with sustainable focused organizations working in the agriculture and climate sectors. I know CGI, the Center for Journalism and Innovation Development, they do a lot of collaborations with like-minded organizations. So once they can see that, once your potential investors can also see that you're not just doing this alone, you are doing it with like-minded people, they would see it sort of gives or puts on your brand that you are all inclusive, and aside just within yourself, you are also reaching out to like-minded organizations who are charting the course on climate smart solutions, and they will see the need to, come on board and to invest in the services that you provide.
Thank you so much for that. That was really insightful. Especially I think most tech, like you said, most agri-tech companies usually don't tell their stories. Business storytelling is really key. If you don't tell what you're doing, nobody will know and would not even know how we're actually using agri-tech to mitigate climate, and then so creating climate solutions, especially innovative ones. And so now we'll go to the last question. And then the last question, we are having the likes of, COP28 in the corner, and COP28 is all about climate change and the rest, and especially this COP28, which is going to be held in Dubai. They're really focusing on agriculture, and policymakers are trying to ensure that how do we create solutions, especially things like agroforestry solutions, planting trees to, absorb CO2 and the rest. So the question here is, are there any specific government policies or regulations framework in Nigeria that can incentivize investment in agri-tech startups for climate smart solutions? And what would the advice for policymakers and world leaders on the topic for the upcoming COP28? So we'll start with Mr. We'll start with you. We'll go back to you, Titulokwe. We'll start with you.
All right. Thank you very much, Samira. For me, I would say that the advice I would give policymakers and world leaders in the upcoming COP28 is that they need to, prioritize climate smart agriculture. They need to recognize the critical role that agriculture plays in climate smart mitigation and adaptation. So they need to integrate climate smart agriculture in national policy strategies, prioritize investment in agri-tech solutions that promote sustainable practices, resource efficiency, and resilience to climate impact. It's also important that they establish dedicated funds. They need to take it more serious to establish dedicated funds and financial mechanisms to support agri-tech startups in accessing capital, create venture capital funds that impact investment platforms, and they need to have like tailor-made needs for agri-tech entrepreneurs, encourage them to have collaborations between financial institutions, development banks, and private investors. I think that's what I would like to say. I'd like to add, basically, it's just about giving, providing funds basically for agri-tech startups, now that they are even aware that that is the way to go, including technology into mainstreaming technology into climate solutions. and it's one thing to be aware, it's another thing to actually fund it. So it's important that they actually dedicate funds for this purpose.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Abdulsamad.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think for policymakers, what is interested, I participated in the foundation, also leading to the COP28. What I did talk about there was really to stress on research institutions and organizations we have in Nigeria. Like I said earlier, that we have up to 20 plus research institutions, which have certainly the objective of enhancing adoption and development resilient technologies for small farmers in Nigeria. So they are not, until you visit as an individual to this center, that's when you what you see, that there are so many.
Sorry, Mr. Abdulsamad, we can hardly hear you.
Sorry. Oh, sorry for that. Is it clearer? Is it louder now?
Yes, it is now.
Okay. Thank you. So I was talking about the research institutes that really for our government, they really need to look at our research institutions, how they are working. Probably making it a private, privatizing it some to some level, probably public-private partnership work that can enhance the development of resistant seeds and other solutions that farmers can adopt. Because having them just lying down there, having these solutions shelf is not, will not, and even if we continue to pump in money, because yes, in the budget annual there is money meant for this research institution. So why would we allow the product or the solution just be on the shelves? So we should look for more business-oriented systems that will allow these solutions to trickle down to those who need it the most. And of course, like I did mention earlier, part of the challenge is that when you adopt the climate system, there tends to be no reward for that. So the government have to, and policymakers, stakeholders have to look at certifying the system to reward the farmers or organizations that are trying to reduce global emission. I made an instance where you have a rice farmer using the system of rice intensification that reduces the greenhouse emission by almost 60%, or 64%. So, but there is no incentive for that farmer, because when you take those commodities back to the market, it's still the same price with the person that is using all the other because they are necessary and polluting the environment. So I think these are two critical things that I think are really important for policymakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll talk about the policy, and then thank you to everyone who has spoken so far. I will just go to the Q&A section where we have the first question. Which was asked earlier, and I think it's and I think we should answer that. And the question goes: climate issues of flood, droughts, etc. have come to stay. The absence of concerted efforts from the government, what do you think the smallholder farmers should do to mitigate the effects of these climate issues and still produce at optimal yields? Mr. Abdulsamad, you work so much with smallholder farmers. Do you want to do justice to this question?
Yeah, okay, yes, thank you very much. I think for the farmer, right, let's take, for instance, the smallholder farmers in Jigawa. What is available to him? It's the availability of the seeds, good agronomic practices that have been taught by development organizations. I think they have to look for solutions themselves. If it's not available in their communities, they have to go looking out for them. And the challenge is that our farmers get used to everything for free, coming for free. So we have to really they have to really set their mind on the fact that there's no more freebies currently. So they have to go out there, stretch out themselves to meet Extension Organization. And this is exactly what Extension Africa is also doing, trying to make sure that farmers have access to this, the needed solutions through extension agents. So they should be able to access the extension agents nearest to them that can guide them on climate smart agricultural practices. And most of them are just like you said, are really high yielding. I made the instance with for rice. This also the system of rice intensification increases the yield by almost 24% and the productivity. So yes, the solutions are there. It's just for them to open themselves to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Titilope, do you want to add to that? And please, if you have any questions, post on the group. If not, I guess we don't have much questions. Titilope, do you want to add to that?
Okay, to mitigate the effect of climate crisis, smallholder farmers can form farm estates. I mean, in the sense of, can be likened to like a cooperative. They can pool funds together to get like irrigation services on their farms. For instance, I remember when I went, I interviewed like smallholder female farmers in Nasarawa State. And one of the methods they were using to, still increase their productivity, crop productivity, is the use of irrigation. Although for them, it was still sort of challenging because they still had to like pay for jerry cans of water to convey to their farms to, wet the farmlands and all that. But irrigation enables off-season farming, makes it possible for farming to still go on irrespective of how the weather condition is like. It can be done through digging wells, boreholes, channeling dams, water from dams, redirecting them to the farmlands. Smaller farmers can maybe just get 1 or 2 acres of land, which can save cost of sinking a borehole for the cost of pumping or pumping water rather to their farms to get water to wet their farms. They can also make efforts to get information around weather patterns in places affected by flooding, so they know when to plant ridges and the like. So yeah, more of irrigation coming together for this particular purpose instead of just doing it individually. Farmers can come together to see how they can channel water from probably a large pool of water to their farms to help them irrigate their farms.
Thank you so much, Titilope. I think we can hear you again, but we got everything you said. If you can hear us, we currently cannot hear you. You are muted. Well, yes, we got everything you said. And thank you to everyone who joined. We've been able to answer the only question that we have. I guess that means we don't have more questions because many people we've already answered. The panelists have done justice to answering the questions that we are on our mind, especially as to this team. And so I want to once again say thank you to everyone who joined and who stayed to hear. Those on YouTube, thank you for watching live, and those on Zoom, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any question that we're not able to answer, just post it and we would try to do justice by maybe sending you an email and the rest. Currently, we have a form on the Google chat, for feedback. Please don't forget to create a feedback and to fill the feedback form. This would really help us in ensuring that the next webinar that we do tailors to what the current issues are happening. And once again, thank you to all the speakers for accepting and joining us today. You guys have done justice to the topics and the questions. Would like to say that we've come to the end of today's webinar. Please don't forget to fill the form on the chat, and we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Let me post that on the screen so that people can also see the form. That's the form. Please try to fill it. Once you fill, you can exit. Thank you once again. Thank you to all our speakers.
Thank you.